Right then, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be an absolute feast. And I say that because, look, India are going to be traveling to South Africa. In fact, they're already there. And we have, of course, a man who's stellar, a southpaw, yet again on cricket.com. I don't know what it is with us and left-handers, but we'll bring him on the screen right now. I'm talking about JP Duminy, Jean-Paul. Thank you so much for making time. We've titled the
Thank
show
you.
Final Frontier because, of course, India haven't won in South Africa yet. Let me just,
hmm
instead of giving you a loosener, let me put a Yorker straight away for you. Do you think it can be done?
There's always an opportunity, whether it be 1% or 99%. There's always an opportunity to make an impact in a series, and particularly the way India have been playing Test cricket over the last few years, you'd feel that they stand a good chance. The unfortunate thing, based upon the current circumstances that we face, in the global stage, according to the pandemic and the impact that it's had on the global game, is that South Africa have missed quite a bit of Test cricket throughout 2021, and they're coming in raw in terms of their reference points for Test cricket. Yes, some of the players have had first class experience over the last couple of weeks, but we all know that the pressure and the expectation that comes with an iconic Test series, as the Freedom Series between South Africa and India, is going to be a massive one. And the fact that it's starting on Boxing Day, brings a little bit of, in South African terms, it's called a gees, just that little buzz about it. And I'm certainly looking forward to this one. And that first session is going to be crucial in just to how you're going to start the series. And day one is always an exciting one on Boxing Day.
It's going to be an absolute riveting, compelling watch. We'll, of course, cover it all on cricket.com. Now that we have JP Duminy, there's going to be a lot of insights. We can promise you that. Right. I mean, just from the outset, how do you view this series? Do you think India go in as favourites? South Africa, of course, still in that transformational zone because there are going to be a lot of fresh faces. Do you think India start as favourites despite the fact that they never won there?
I wouldn't say favorites. I would still put that favoritism tag with South Africa based upon the conditions, right? So even though you think about the big blow in Nokia's injury, you think of Rabada and Nokia and the impact that they've had together as a partnership in world cricket. We've seen them operate together for Delhi Capitals as well, and the impact that they've had there. I still feel that South Africa has the upper hand. Now, with saying that, you think about these two bowling attacks. You think about the seam attacks that these two teams have, and there's not a lot of difference in them. The way that India has really taken to different conditions outside of India and how they've prepared well enough to make an impact. We've seen the impact that they've had in Australia, even in the UK, in the Test Championship final as well. So, even though I feel that there's the favoritism tag with South Africa, it's going to be a strong matchup between those two bowling attacks. And I think that is going to be the impact in the series, particularly with the first two tests being played in the Highveld. We know that they are seamer-friendly conditions. And how are the sort of variance in the top six going to be against the two sides? So that's going to be impactful for me, but I still feel that South Africa could have the upper hand coming into the series.
All right. I mean, you mentioned Pacers over there. There's no other place in the world where Pacers thrive more than South Africa. I say that because since 2018, strike rate for all Pacers have just been the best in the Rainbow Nation. So, of course, Siraj, Bumrah, and of course, not to forget, Ngidi and the South African Pacers will be licking their lips and being, you know what, let's relish this challenge. Right. We'll talk about the individual bits in just a bit. But what I want to ask you is about Centurion. I mean, it's not been a happy hunting ground for India. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
2010, Sachin Tendulkar, fantastic turn going in vain. 2018, Virat Kohli, fantastic turn going in vain. Is it something about the playing surface? What is it that Centurion will probably be daunting for India once again? Do you think that?
Yeah, you think about those conditions, and the first thought that comes to mind is the extra bounce, and how most traveling teams, come up against that. Teams have had success there. I think about Australia and England that have had some success, but yet it's the subcontinent teams that potentially have struggled. And you mentioned two names there, Kohli and Tendulkar, that have found some success. But I think it's the sort of partnerships of success that touring teams are looking for. Can you build those strong partnerships together that put up a formidable score? And you think about first inning scores, you think about a 400 plus that can really solidify teams, having the upper hand in the test match. The difficulty, I guess, with Centurion, particularly this time of the year, is the heat factor, and that can create a variable bounce. So toss becomes a crucial part, particularly there's not a lot of rain around, which that can also play a significant part. But when you have, the surface drying up a little bit and cracks opening up a touch, that can, like I said, create that variable bounce, and that becomes a little bit of a difficulty for the batting sides. So toss becomes crucial. Centuries are crucial, from a batting perspective. Can the teams really make an impact? But again, we're speaking about the sort of impact of the seam attacks. And you mentioned there's Siraj and Shami and Bumrah. I think about the contest between Bumrah and the opening pair of Alga and Markram. That's going to be a fascinating contest. I think about Kohli and Rabada. I read a stat where Kohli was Rabada's first test wicket, but since then hasn't really made an impact against Kohli. But that's going to be a fascinating test of egos as well. We have big name players coming up against one another. And I think, particularly the fans are really licking their lips for those kind of contests.
Indeed, and it makes you think about the probable 11s. You mentioned the toss is critical, of course, conditions you touched upon. Do we have some sort of fair idea as cricket fans, experts alike, of who they will probably go up? We'll start with South Africa because there are plenty of fresh faces. You mentioned Elgar. Of course, he'll be relishing this opportunity to, lead from the front. He's a kind of character who kind of wears his heart in his sleeve and over my dead body sort of thing. Do we, get a fair sense that who they're going to be playing? Because you mentioned no knock here. Can you give us some sort of insight of who they might start? Or is it too close to a call?
One could assume certain combinations, but again, you think about conditions, and you can't see two spinners playing. I'm talking about two frontline spinners from a South African point of view. I think Maharaj has proven that even though it might not be spin-friendly conditions per se, but he warrants his selection in that side with his consistency and the ability to hold up an end for the seamers to strike from the other end. So I would assume that he would be in that starting 11. I see obviously Rabada there, and Ngidi would be, I think, back in that playing 11. Call it the surprise, but the selection in the squad would be Duan Olafir, who's had a formidable start to the first class season, taking 28 wickets in the first four first class games and playing up in the Highveld as well. Getting an idea of what success looks like in those conditions are going to be crucial. So I potentially see him being in that starting 11. I think something that has been a critical piece in success for South Africa is finding that all-rounder role. And they've showed a lot of confidence in Vian Mulder, who hasn't necessarily produced the goods just yet, but I do think that they see something special in him, and I've worked with him as well personally, and he's a formidable character. He's got a good, solid head on his shoulders, good mature head on his shoulders, and can make an impact with the ball on these conditions, but more importantly, has the ability to really score centuries at that number 6-7 role, which you think that he'll come into play. So 3 out-and-out seamers with an all-rounder and the spinner seems like the balanced 11 for South Africa. So that's kind of what I would foresee. Keegan Peterson, who's someone that has just come into the test rankings, just played the 2 tests, and you would foresee that him getting an extended run over the next couple of test matches for him to try and solidify his spot within that side, possibly at number 3. Rassie van der Dussen at 4, and the vice captain Temba Bavumba at 5. Quinton de Kock is no doubt going to be at 6, which is probably somebody that they're going to miss to the back end of this tournament, or the series rather, with him possibly missing the last 2 tests with the birth of his first child. So that's sort of the probable 11 that I foresee here.
Yeah, it makes you think about, whether it's a settled level or not. But look, when we talk about South African cricket, we of course mention names like yours, AB de Villiers, Jack Callis, Dale Steyn. Do you get hope as a South African cricket fan that there could be some hidden gems in this squad right now? And if so, who are those players that we're talking about? Because you mentioned Keegan Peterson, you of course mentioned Olivier.
Yeah.
Are there more to come through?
They certainly are, and I guess one of the benefits, if they are any, in terms of the pandemic and the impact COVID has had, is that squads have been extended somewhat. And if you think about the extended squad of South Africa currently, I think about players like I mentioned, Keegan Peterson, who's had formidable first class seasons over the last couple of years, who's averaging over 40. So he'll be one that would certainly want to relish the opportunity. I think about Glenton Stillman, who's somebody that reminds me a lot of Vernon Philander. Actually, he comes from a little town in the Western Cape of Oudtshoorn, and he's sort of at 130, 135 pace, but has a lot of skill. And again, you think about the high veld conditions, which are seamer friendly. There are opportunities to potentially think of somebody like that if they're looking for the skill set of a Vernon Philander. And then, you think about seeming potentials. I think about Marco Jansen. Here's a unique character who's only 21 years old, so doesn't have a lot of experience necessarily in the first class arena, but has had exposure in the IPL. And interestingly, Virat Kohli was pretty much impressed with him the last time that they were here, because he was one of the net bowlers that came through to bowl at the Indian team, and subsequently you feel that may have had an impact in terms of his selection in IPL. But he's an exciting prospect for the future. Left arm seamer, over 2 meters tall, so can have a real impact, particularly on these conditions, in terms of that extra bounce. From a batting perspective, keeper batters, Kyle Verreynne is somebody that has really stood out in the first class arena across all formats. Has really been head and shoulders above a lot of the top order batters. So I would assume with the loss of Quinton de Kock in the next 2 tests, the last 2 tests, he would be the stand-in for Quinton de Kock. And what I'm really excited about is Ryan Rickleton. Ryan Rickleton, I play a role with the the Imperial Lions as their batting coach, and they up in Joburg. He's certainly been a standout over this past first half of the season, particularly with the bat. An exciting prospect across all formats again, and also has leadership qualities. So there's a vast array of players that are really pushing for opportunities in that national side. And as I said in the beginning there, with the extended squads, really has now an opportunity to have a look at all these various different types of players for different formats, which is truly exciting for South African cricket.
Indeed. Thanks for that lowdown with all those players, and let's see how they, of course, take to Test cricket. Hopefully, they kind of really leave a legacy, because, look, South African cricket has changed quite a bit the last time India toured there. You mentioned all those bowlers. There's no Steyn, there's no Morkel and Philander this time around. It's a complete fresh faces from their perspective. Right, let's dive deep into India right now. Before we get into their probable 11, there's a whole talk about Ravichandran Ashwin, because on paper, and to be fair, the records also suggest that he's India's biggest match winner because of the man of the series that he's accumulated in Test cricket. He didn't get a game in England. He, of course, was a man of the series against New Zealand in home conditions. Do you think he will play a pivotal part? Because his numbers in South Africa are not that good, but he can still rip up the rule book.
I think there's an opportunity for him to play a part now, and the reason why I say that it all depends on the combinations that Virat Kohli goes with. So if he goes with an out and out seam attack and not playing the all rounder in Thakur, that's where I think Ashwin can play a role. So again, those combinations become important. But you're looking at South African conditions, especially in the high felt. I think it's a fine line if you're just going to go in with six batters, because in these conditions there's a great potential to be 3-4 down very quickly. I think you need a little bit of depth in terms of your batting when it comes to particularly Centurion and the Wanderers. So, in terms of a probable 11, I would certainly want to see a Thakur and an Ashwin in there, and then the sort of three-pronged seam attack of, again, you have a vast array of options in the Indian attack, but one would assume that Shami and Bumrah will be a definite. It's whether they're going to go with Ishan Sharma or Mohammad Siraj as that third out-and-out seamer. It's going to be the interesting one. I like the look of Mohammad Siraj. I'm excited to see what he can bring in South African conditions. He's got raw pace, but again, you think about Ishan Sharma, who's got the experience and has somewhat a little bit of success in South Africa. But again, it's what combinations are going to work for Virat Kohli.
Okay, let's see how it, of course, unfolds, because Indian fans right now will be chomping at the bits to watch this, of course, on Boxing Day. And like you said, the toss is critical. So let's see if Virat kind of plays his cards close to his chest in terms of team selection and whatnot. Shardul Thakur is a good shout, though, because I think he'll definitely get a start, given the fact that there's no Jadeja. And Ashwin, well, it's always going to be a mystery with regards to that. Right. I want to ask you about certain things off the field with regards to South Africa and this whole SJN thing which has come about, which is, of course, we'll dive deeper into that, so to speak. What do you make of it? Because let me just pick out Dean Elgar quote right now from his press conference. He went on to clearly state that they're backing the coaches as players, and that's, of course, a given. How do you see it, JP, from a former player's perspective, with everything kind of unraveling so fast?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, particularly the SJN process, with so many various people coming out and sharing their stories, which I think has been an important part of the process. And for me, if we can just park the sort of South African team right now, if I think about the SJN process, I think it was a necessity. And the reason why I say that is, you think about the history of South African cricket. There's certainly a lot of hurt that is floating around. And it's something that we need to address. And it's something that we need opportunities for guys that feel massively affected by the process that they've gone through and the experiences that they've gone through, to really air it, but also to take action on it. And it's a difficult one to say what are those action points that need to unfold. I think the starting process is that we need to address it, and opportunities for people to talk about what the experiences are. And then you come to the South African team, and the hot sort of top talking points have been the processes of certain positions and the like. And I'm not surprised by the fact that the players would back the coaching staff. And ultimately, you think about the relationships that players have had with the coaching staff over the last 2 years, which has been a good one. I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to be part of the World Cup management staff, and you get a sense that players are enjoying what they experiencing at the moment in terms of the relational equities. And Mark Boucher has been somebody that has pushed the players to really achieve some great things. You think about the success that they had at the World Cup, even though they missed out on the qualifying round, but the way they went about it was pretty good. I thought they played some really good cricket, and obviously the management staff becomes a big part of that. Now, there's always going to be the sensitivity around things being said, and truths around those things. And the important things for me is that yes, the SJN process was an important one, but can we find a space where whoever has been accused of whatever they're accused of, can we sit in a room and have conversation, truthful and sincere conversations about who's feeling aggrieved, who's potentially been targeted in terms of what they've been accused of, and can we have a sort of not a delegation, but a facilitation process where somebody's sitting in that room and really trying to unpack this process of, right, why are we feeling aggrieved? What was said? Was there some truth behind it? Can there be some sense of apologies, sincere apologies in that process? And I think that's where the gold and the real impact can be made. But unfortunately, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We're still facing and dealing with the hurt of the past. And once we can get to that point where we can really forgive one another, forgive the processes that have been taken and unfolded, we can really sort of acknowledge and then find a solution going forward. And I think it's not only about identifying the hurt of the past and the experiences of the past, it's finding solutions. And these are the important aspects of finding the right people to be brought in to help with the solution process. And that for me is where the gold lies.
Okay, I mean, whether it's opened up a can of worms, only time will tell. But I think the three men who, of course, have been really vindicated in this is, of course, Smith, Boucher, and A.B. de Villiers. But more on this story soon. Right, I mean, JP, it's been great chatting cricket with you in general. Of course, looking ahead to this India-South Africa series. Now, there's a lot of fans on cricket.com. What would you say to all of them watching this series? Please urge them to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, look, it is a fascinating series, and I think everyone is certainly excited to get this one underway. And what I would encourage all the fans is to really tune into the YouTube channel, to really support cricket.com, but more importantly, to stay tuned in terms of the insights that we can potentially bring to them, behind the scenes stories of certain players. But again, the matchups are riveting. I mentioned earlier about Rabada and Kohli and Bumrah and the opening pair of Alga and Markram, but also the young talent that's on show in both sides. I think about the excitement around a Rishabh Pant and a Quinton de Kock. That's going to be some exciting matchups as well. Going to be interesting to see whether Rahane gets a go, Shreyas Iyer gets a go. Vihari was also a young talent who could potentially get a go in the series as well. So some exciting players to look out for, but more importantly, what an exciting series and just the history that these two teams have in the Freedom Series and what that represents for the history of both countries is going to be exciting.
Super. Let's see how it really unfolds. And like you mentioned, there's so many subplots in the grander narrative, which is, of course, South Africa versus India. The final frontier. India, of course, conquered every test playing nation, but South Africa still remains unticked on that list. Let's see if Virat Kohli kind of gets that off as well. But JP, thanks so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch you, of course, post this test on the 30th before New Year's to get lots more from you. And we'll leave it there.
Thanks, Avanish.